Welcome to Mom and Mind. I'm perinatal psychologist and host Dr. Kat. There is more to the story than just postpartum depression, and this podcast aims to share it all. From personal stories and lived experience to experts who break down the ups and downs of life, from getting pregnant, pregnancy, perinatal loss, and postpartum adjustment to new parenthood. While this is not psychotherapy or medical advice, it is all of the stuff you ever wanted to know about mental health and new parenthood. Welcome to Mom and Mind. I'm your host, Dr. Kat. In our episode today, we are welcoming Dr. Veronica Io. She is a bilingual licensed clinical social worker, and it is her passion to help new and seasoned mothers navigate the challenges of parenthood. She transitioned her practice into primarily working with mothers after becoming one herself. Some of the experiences that she navigated, specifically undiagnosed postpartum depression with her first, ultimately led her to shift in her practice, seek specialized training in working with moms, but especially mamas of color. Supporting mothers through various walks of life is one of her guiding posts, and it influenced her even in her dissertation, where she researched the factors that influence the success of student mothers in higher education institutions. Part of her discussion with us today is normalizing that therapists also struggle with mental health, as well as to normalize in her cultures, specifically Black and Mexican, that there are mental health struggles even with professionals. Now, let's meet Dr. Io. The Mom and Mind online shop is up and running. We are so grateful to all of you who've already purchased mugs, travel mugs, water bottles, or magnets, and excited to see how excited everyone else is about these being available to you. Really hopeful that they can serve as a reminder to you to fill your cup first, put yourself on the list, and take comfort in knowing that you are not alone. You can find a link to our shop on momandmind.com or in our Instagram bio link. The proceeds of sales go to support this podcast to keep it going. And also, I'm really happy to offer 10% of proceeds to Perinatal Mental Health Alliance for people of color on a quarterly basis. If anybody out there gets a mug, I'd love to see a picture of you with it. Or if you get a mug and you post it anywhere on social, please make sure to tag us so we can love it right along with you. Thanks for any support you can offer this podcast to keep it going. Welcome, Veronica. Thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm really grateful that you're coming on to share your experience, very specifically for all the therapists out there who feel pressure to, have it all together as a therapist. But as you and I both know, we are human and also have our own challenges and struggles. So I'm really grateful to you for you coming on to share your experience. Please do start wherever you feel comfortable. And we'd love to hear your journey.
Okay, thank you so much. I think back to when I became a mother, I very much, I think often of I wish I could give myself a hug, go back and say, oh my gosh, Veronica, you need a hug. You need a big hug and that it's going to be okay. It's a very conscious, it comes to me that first year. And I remember, we became pregnant and no one prepares you to be pregnant. It was not my funnest time. I'm not a big fan of actually being pregnant. I love the prize that we get at the end. The baby is adorable and cute. Just me physically, body, we don't vibe. We don't like it. And it was hard. It was hard being pregnant. And I remember, especially with my first, and there's been some healings with my second and my third, but my first really was the big teacher for me, just that experience. I can remember just continuously pushing myself, even though I was sick. So for me, all my pregnancies, I had nausea and throwing up, intense, it was hard. There would be times that, oh my gosh, I would be just in tears, even, mentioning that I'm a therapist, right? I would see clients and just, because all smells would bother me. Smells, and people have different smells. It's not that my clients smelled, but everyone carries different smells. Breakfasts they ate, your nose just becomes so attuned. And I would run back and forth to the bathroom, just throwing up.
Wow.
And
this is while you're meeting with clients?
Well, not during session. So during session, I would drink hot water. That would be my thing that would keep me settled. I would drink hot water. But after session, I would, say goodbye, here it is, holding space for these individuals, and not really holding space for myself of
Mm.
like, Veronica, ease up a little bit, ease up. Like it was just it was just hard. Like just
Was that
I
like
think
all
back and
throughout your pregnancy?
yes. Oh my
Oh
gosh,
gosh.
all throughout my pregnancy. Oh my
Mm-hmm.
gosh, like it was
It's a
I
long
used to think
time.
there was something wrong. Yeah,
Mhm.
9 months of I will correct myself. It ended when I started maternity leave. There you go, 2 weeks before I gave birth.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Oh boy.
But I was at home, and I think back, and I wish, I did implement it with my second and my third of just easing up, right? If
Mm-hmm.
I didn't, there was just really assessing, like, you know, yes, I love and appreciate the work that I'm doing with my clients, but I also need to take care of myself. Like, it is not,
Yeah.
at least for me, it wasn't okay to be running back and forth,
Mm-hmm.
and just kind of listening to my body of the rest that I needed. And that to me really started just the whirlwind of that first year of, so my daughter came into this world, and she came in after 4 days of being in labor. It was,
That's long.
yes, long, and also just not, I had this idea of how I would give birth. I was, so at that time I was running every day, and everyone would tell me, oh my gosh, she's just going to pop on out, because you're just running every day.
Like
That's not what
literally
happened. I just
running.
want to say, yes, yes.
Like
No, she
okay.
did not. I just want to say, she did not come out that way.
Okay, got it.
But I ended up having to have an emergency cesarean. And I just remember feeling like I failed, like I did something wrong, because
Mm-hmm.
here I was, like, you know, running, and these high crazy expectations that I like held myself to at that time, where, you know, I'm being wheeled off to have my cesarean in tears, feeling like I
Yeah.
failed after 4 days. I
Oh
remember
no.
chanting to myself through contractions, like, you've run marathons, you can do this, like, just
Mm.
keep going. And I felt like I failed. So she
That's a
was born.
devastating feeling going
Yeah,
into
into it.
yeah, and to have the C-section and
Yeah.
delivering your daughter that way. Yep.
And she's born, and I meet her, and, hey, my daughter's born. And then they wheel her off to the NICU.
Oh,
And
I'm assuming that was not expected.
no. So my daughter was 40 weeks and 4 days when she was born.
Mm.
So she was healthy.
Mm-hmm.
The thing that sent her to the NICU was, so I am allergic to penicillin.
Oh no.
So they gave me, thoroughly read my chart, and they
Mm.
gave me something that was in the family of penicillin.
Oh my gosh.
And so I had a reaction. So naturally, she had a reaction, and I lost it. So I already felt like I failed. They wheeled her off, and I was just thrown because I was past 40 weeks.
Right, right.
And the reason that we had a reaction was because of something that I was given, right? Because
Mm-hmm.
of lack of paying attention. Well, I don't know, whatever happened there. And so it wasn't my best shiny moment. I really want to say I did use many curse words,
Yeah, you
and I was
did.
just vivid.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Sure.
Okay, because so for people who have had a cesarean before, right, there's this piece of you, they monitor you
Mm-hmm.
before they send you into your room. And I was without my baby.
Mm-hmm.
And already I'm feeling like I'm failing. And here I am, like, not having my baby. And everyone, of course, is looking at me like I was doing something wrong. And and she's in the NICU, and it was just hard. And so they wheeled me, into my room, and I'm still upset. And I remember the nurse came, and, they're like, okay, they can meet your baby. I wasn't the first person that held my baby. I wasn't the first person that got to see her. My dad went, my sister went, my husband went, and I couldn't walk, right? So they can't wheel me into the NICU. You have to be able to walk. You have to sit in the bed for some time,
Right.
and because I had a cesarean, so I lost it. I was just in tears. So I was counting down I forget how long it is, 8 years, 12 hours, whatever amount of time it is that you have to stay in that bed. And so I had even more delayed reactions to what they gave me. And so to my body. So my body had reactions. So they gave me Benadryl. So Benadryl makes you sleepy.
Right.
So I don't remember meeting my daughter. My husband took pictures and I'm not there. Like I am not there. I can't even tell you anything about what she was like. Just that moment, because I think I have vivid memories of when I met my sons, my following two, but my daughter, I don't. And it was just a rocky 4 days in the hospital. It was feeling like I failed because I had a cesarean. Gosh, I don't even know my daughter. I remember thinking that, like, I don't know her, feeling like, one, you don't even know what you're doing. So that's another thing, that you don't know what you're doing when you have a baby, regardless. And, trouble nursing. It was just like a perfect storm for me to be depressed.
Yeah.
It was a perfect storm. And
do you recall if that feeling set in pretty quickly?
Yeah, I remember it falling I want to say even the next day, because I struggled, right? Yeah, I had my first. I struggled. Milk takes a while to come in, which is another thing they don't prep me for, is that your milk takes a while to come in. And at that time, I had these standards of like, my baby was not going to have any formula, and my baby was never going to do this, and I was going to be this way. These standards that I thought of what a mom is and what had to be. And so I just was beating up my body. Like, why are you not producing this milk? Right? They would tell me, just pump, just pump. It hurts to pump. It hurts to nurse. It hurts. It was just pain, and
on top of pain.
On pain. Yeah. Pain on pain on pain. And I remember one of the nurses telling me, like, well, you just need to give her formula. Like, you're just not going to be able to nurse. Your nipples are not going to be able to just give her formula. And in my head, I knew that was an insensitive thing to say, but in that moment, I was like, oh my gosh, like another thing that's wrong with my body, like another thing. You're telling me another thing. And the bright light in that moment, and I think I think of this moment in those 4 days. So, I mean, they were a hard time, and I struggled with depression and anxiety after having my first for a long time, even if I didn't know it at the time. Like I look back at pictures throughout that whole year, and there's times where I can see myself, like I'm present there. Like obviously I'm there, but like that I was like present in that memory, and times that I wasn't. But in that 4-day stay, I had a friend who also had a baby around that time. She had her baby a little bit sooner than I did, and he actually was in the NICU as well. And he had come significantly earlier. And I remember I remember texting her actually, like saying like, I can't do this. Like, I'm not a good mom already. Like, I'm already failing at this. Like, why? Like, maybe she's better with someone else. Like, because I don't feel connected to her. Like, I can't. I had to walk. So she stayed in the NICU for those 4 days that I was in the hospital after cesarean. So I would have to walk to the NICU, which was, of course, is nowhere near where you're staying. And
that makes no
I
sense.
always felt like it. Yes. Hospitals just make a change on that. But and also feeling like an intruder. I felt like I had to ask, can I pick her up? Is it okay? Like, can I do this? Like, it's not yours. It didn't feel like it was my thing. So I remember telling her, like, man, maybe I shouldn't leave the baby. Like, maybe I'm not meant to be her mom. And she calls me. She's also a therapist now. So clearly
Okay.
therapist, you need that.
Yeah.
And she's like, she's crying, she's crying on the
Mm.
phone with me. She's like, look, Veronica, yeah, we're crying. And she's like, I just need you to focus on one thing at a time,
Mm.
one thing at a time. We're not, because I had sent her one of those texts of like, my life was over. That's how I felt
Mhm.
at that
Mhm.
time, those deep texts.
Yeah.
And she's like, I just need you to take one breath, one thing at a time. So she's like, what do you need to do right now? And
Mm.
and she's like, I was like, oh, the baby, her feeding is coming up. Okay.
Mhm.
You're going to want you to get up. And like, she had to like spell out the things that I
Yeah.
needed to do. And she's like, just do that. And I was like, okay, I can do that. And that's what I did for a year. It's not what we expected. It's not what I
Mhm.
thought it was.
Mhm.
But I felt like I often lean back on that of,
Yeah.
if you don't know what to do, just
Mm.
take the one thing that's in front of you right now. Like, what
Yeah,
is the one thing that has to be here?
for sure. That's
Because
really solid
I'm not
advice.
the person.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's good advice. She's also a mom of four. I also want to say she's the mama of four. She had been through this rodeo before.
Oh, no. Yeah.
Those, but it helped me
Mhm.
because my personality naturally is one of juggling multiple things. That is me by default. And so motherhood for me has really been a struggle. There's
Mhm.
areas that I excel in because
Mhm.
naturally I have this personality trait, but
Mm.
there's areas that I struggle in. Even
Mhm.
as a therapist, like I know all these things of how that I do for my clients, but then I realized that I really struggled with doing that for myself, especially
Yeah.
in this
Yeah.
role of as a mother.
Yeah.
These standards that I held myself to, and that I'm still to this day really being intentional and doing work on really balancing this piece.
I'm sure.
And
Did
I knew that I needed.
oh, sorry, can I ask a quick question? Did anyone aside from your therapist friend know what was going on for you? Could anybody tell? Was anyone concerned?
No. And part of that is because I have a very good face that I show the world.
Yeah.
I have and that is my personality
Mm.
of my default. Okay, let me phrase that. It's my default personality. I go
Mhm.
to that, right? It's not
Mhm.
all of who I am. So to clarify, I did all the things. I did getting up, ridiculous pumping schedule to get my milk up. I did
Right.
the pictures of every month. I did the
Mhm.
activities that they said that were good. I did the mommy and me classes, and all those things that I was supposed to do,
Mhm.
what I thought, let me rephrase that, what I thought I was supposed to do.
Right.
And it ultimately, and so when I think back, I'm like, oh my gosh, I want to give you a hug, Veronica, because I need you to sit down, let people help you. Like,
Mhm.
just let people help you. And
Were people like trying to help you and you said, no, I got it?
of course, yeah, like
Uh-huh.
people would offer to help,
Yeah.
and I would just say, no, no, no. Or they would help in a way that wasn't helpful for me.
Sure.
Like, and I just didn't have the voice at that time to say, like, actually, that's not helpful for me. Like, can you do something, different?
Mhm.
The biggest thing that comes to my mind is I was really like, I had a big wound in regards to being separated from my daughter so soon.
Mhm.
It just, so I had a hard time when other people would hold her. Like, I had
Mhm.
like a really hard time. Everyone and their mama wants to come and hold this baby. That's what
Right.
everyone wants to do if you have a baby.
Right.
I did not want people holding my baby. I just felt uncomfortable. And even just inviting people to the hospital, right? My following two pregnancies or after birth, I didn't invite people to the hospital. I was
Yeah.
like, no, it's okay. Don't come.
It's too
Don't come.
much. Yeah. I'll let you know.
Yes, I'll let you know. Just like things like that, where it's like people were like, I got this, go nap and I'll hold the baby for you. I don't want you to hold my baby. I don't want to, that's what I wanted to say, but I felt
Yeah.
rude saying like,
Yeah.
and so yes, people did offer. So I'm not going to be like, no one offered to help me. I think people did do, but some of those things I didn't find helpful, and it wasn't. It took some time for me to actually really took intentional work because I didn't see. So in my first year, I did have support through Mommy and Me. So I attended Mommy and Me, and even in Mommy and Me, like it was great. However, I didn't see moms that looked like me. There was only one other mom that we shared. So I'm Afro Latina. So obviously when you look at my face, I look like a Black woman, which I am. But my mother was Mexican. And so she, for the most part, dictated our cultural pieces. So I have identify strongly with the Mexican culture. And so I found a friend who, in Mommy and Me, who her and I bonded immediately. And often we will joke that, or our husbands will joke like, my gosh, you two were lifesavers in meeting each other because in the middle of the night when I needed a text, because her baby is actually 1 day older than my daughter. And we both went through emergency C-sections. We both have similar type A personalities, similar tendencies. And, she made a difference in that sense. But I thought I had it together. Like it really, and it blows my mind sometimes when I think about that. I thought that I had it together because I look back and I'm like, Veronica, you did not have it together.
Right. I'm laughing because I know exactly what you're talking about. Yep.
Right. Like, I'm like, where did you think you had it together? Like, and it really wasn't until some context. So I had my baby and I stayed home with her for a year. For a year, I stayed home with her because I thought that's what a good mom does. A good mom stays home with her baby. That's what I thought. And let me just say, I really loved going back to work. Not gonna lie.
Thank you for saying that because, a lot of people feel that way for sure.
Woo.
Yeah, it's hard work to stay at home.
It is. It's hard work. And I think the other piece that makes it so hard is like, it's working with people. I work with people. I'm a therapist, right? But like, this is a little person that has no words, and like, I'm still trying to figure myself out. I need a hot cup of coffee. I need to pee without being rushed. Sorry for the TMI, but like, it's true.
No,
like,
it's all real.
Things.
Bring the real. Yep.
And, for me, I think the only reason that I realized that year was hard on me, and I have this picture on my desk here at home because I work from home, is I have this picture with me and my daughter. I'm going to toot my horn a little bit. You see that picture and I feel like you could see the happiness that I had I was more balanced. I had gone back to work. Now, it wasn't just the work that made it. It was that I gave time to myself. Like that first year, I struggled to take any moment to myself. Like,
Yep.
Oh my goodness. And I needed it. Like I needed that time, even my self-care. So I love to run. I am a runner. I just love it. That's my problem solving place. Like that is my Zen space. I would take her running in a stroller and there's nothing wrong with that. It's bonding. Yay. She loves to run. It's woo. But I need time not to think about someone else. And I didn't realize that I needed that. Like I just, because I thought I was okay. I thought I'm like, you're doing all the things, Veronica. You're doing everything.
Was there any like internal voice or process or whatnot that didn't allow you to take time for yourself? Like, for instance, like, no, I'm not supposed to. I'm just supposed to be here for my baby. Or was it kind of just you were in the mode of taking care of and it didn't even cross your mind that you needed your own time?
I think it flip-flopped between the two. So it very much was like, moms don't need to take time. You don't need to take time, Veronica. it's all about her. It's
Mm.
all about the baby. And like I said, my hug to my years, that year, I would be like, Veronica, take time,
Mhm.
go for a run. She'll be okay with her dad.
Would you feel, like, guilty, or were you worried, like, you shouldn't do it? Like, you'd feel guilty or anxious being away from her?
I would feel guilty that, she would cry because she naturally had a harder time with my partner because I did the primary everything. So she was so
Yeah.
used to me. Her and I are in a
Yeah, yeah,
rhythm. And
yeah.
I noticed that even with well, all three of them, like
Mhm,
we're in a rhythm, right? Like they
mhm.
respond to me differently than they respond to my partner, and that's fine. And so some things are a little bit easier. Well, that's the perceived notion that I get. They're like, it
Mhm,
looks like you guys are in tune. We are in tune, right?
mhm,
And so, with my husband, it takes him a little bit of time.
mhm,
It does, and
mhm.
that's okay.
Right.
I
Oh,
wouldn't even let them get to that point, like
right, right,
in that first year,
right.
because I
You,
was
like,
like,
jump in and
oh,
kind of rescue
yes,
everyone?
oh,
And yourself?
everyone. I was like, it's okay.
Yeah.
It's okay. Because it's uncomfortable to hear your baby cry.
Right,
It's so uncomfortable. And
right.
then I'm like, no, 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 she can't. Like, it's okay. Like, you I don't need it. It's fine. I'd be on my way to the gym and she wouldn't go to sleep exactly at the time that she was supposed to sleep. And, I would jump in, or I would be on my way, someone would invite me to something and I would cancel. And it was this like sense that, I was doing something wrong if I took guilt, and also feeling like if I did something wrong, if I was taking time to myself, or that I even needed that time for myself.
Yeah.
And that's not the case, and I think it took me a long time. I know we all have a different amount of time that it takes us to realize that, or, still working on it, that time for yourself really makes a difference.
Yeah.
My goodness, I need it, and that picture that I keep on my desk is my reminder to myself, because I see it every day.
Mm.
Not so much, yeah, every day, but when my husband's here, we have to switch off a little bit. So right now I'm not looking at it, but because I look at that woman right there, aka me,
Mhm.
and she is genuinely smiling. She
Mm.
is genuinely present in that moment. And that is actually one of the first pictures after my baby's first year. And because I think she was like, I think it was Christmas, so her second Christmas, where I was actually present. I think we were taking Christmas pictures. I think that's what we were
Mm.
doing. And it took me that long, really,
Mhm.
to realize that I needed that space. And it
Yeah.
wasn't necessarily the going back to work, because work has its challenges. Love being a therapist, but also it's hard work being a
Yeah.
therapist.
Yes.
So it
Yeah.
wasn't like, oh my God, it was that I separated. Like, if a client wouldn't show up, I could go for a walk or eat
Mhm.
my meal, not
Mhm.
being rushed,
Right. Yep.
you know? And I realized, like, slowly after having those moments, like, oh my gosh, I came back so much more refreshed. Even if I had a long day of clients, or even if
Mhm.
I didn't have a long day of clients, right? Like I had
Mhm.
childcare, so I would have that time, and it was, a really big life lesson for me. And it's something that I constantly have to be intentional with, so
Sure.
it's gonna be 4 years that my daughter's about to be 4,
Hmm.
and her birthday serves as a reminder to me of just how much I've changed as a mom, right? This is something that
Yeah.
is the perfect timing in having our interview, because I reflect on just, one, it is my default to want to do it all. Like that
Mhm.
is, I fall into that in times of stress. I fall into that, like when there's just a lot of chaos, or
Right.
just transitions like that. It's 3 kids.
Yeah.
That's a lot of work over here. It's very loud in my house,
Yeah.
and a lot of just reminding myself, right, through therapy. So I got a great therapist who calls me out. I have good friends who remind
That's
me
good.
of, I mean, gently,
Yeah,
she
of
does it
course,
in her
yes.
therapeutic way.
Yeah.
You need it. I needed someone to tell me, because the thing is people would tell me in that first year, like, just take a break. I got it. I'd watch her. I just wasn't ready to hear that. And I want to make space to honor that. Like, if anyone's listening, of like, to honor that feeling of like, if you're not ready, what helps to make you ready? And for me, it took me a while. It took me a while to be ready to really hear that message that I needed time to myself, and how to make that time for myself. And I also know that I fall into that pattern of going back into me doing it all.
Yeah, I as you were just saying that last piece, it made me kind of wonder, because as you know, so many moms struggle with this like idea of taking time for themselves, and somewhere along the way, I don't know, we learn that we're not supposed to, or that it's not okay, or that we should feel bad about it. And I wonder if that was kind of part of your experience too, that there was some messaging from outside of you that you're not supposed to want that.
Yeah, very much messaging outside of me, of like, and I think that's the message also that I heard of like, oh, congrats, you're pregnant, your life is over.
Oh
It's
man.
all about the baby.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I know.
That's harsh.
Yeah.
Your life is
Right.
not your
It's
own
harsh.
anymore.
Yes. Yes. And I was explicit, that I was told. And I mean, I will say the life that I had before, it has adjusted. I don't think it's over. I
Right.
honestly, like, I feel, and this is not me like trying to sugarcoat or anything. I really feel like
Right.
I've really stepped into myself in this role. And I think part of it is because I really had to do some deep work. Like this,
Yeah.
my therapist, and I've gone through two, like, just really called me out on some stuff, some things that like, because outwardly presenting wise, I think I present that I have it together. I think I present that I'm okay. I mean, I'm sure she would probably say that she worked really hard to get, down deep in there, to really tell me. But I think I've really did intentional work. And at first, the motivation was I wanted to be a good mom. But which it is, there's nothing wrong with that. But I think the goal has really shifted for me of like, who am I as a woman? Like, and, how do I continue to show up as the woman that I want to be? Mom is one element of who I am. And so, yeah, it's, was part of the motivation of wanting to come on this podcast of like saying, one, right? Because I think as therapists, maybe you can relate. We get the, oh, well, you must never have a fight with anyone, or you must be, you've got it all together, and like that's not the case, and that like we're still growing. Like I'm,
Absolutely.
still growing as a mother, and that's what really fuels the work that I do as a therapist, because I want to be of help, right? And, walk through whatever journey each mother's going through, because we're all going through something different. And we all have, maybe I've had parents or, moms or even friends who are like the self-care, they got that thing on lock. They know how to do that, right? It's like other elements, right? And that's okay. Like we're all just different and growing. And, if someone listening can be like, okay, like, it's okay that where I'm at right now, just taking that one small step. What is the next thing that I need to do? And, just focusing on that, then my goal is accomplished. That's it. One small talk, one small thing. That's like my life motto.
It sounds like it's working. That's great. Yeah. Especially for, multitaskers, people who can do a lot of stuff, it feels really hard to slow down. Even that much harder to do, quote unquote, like nothing is harder than to do 10 things, because you're used to productivity, you're used to moving and being able to do multiple things. But there's like a very real block, I guess, to doing multiple things. Not to make it sound negative, but there's your own recovery, there's the sleep deprivation and the fogginess of your brain. And that's very normal. And also, certainly, if you have depression or anxiety or trauma, it's much, much harder. So the idea that we can just, jump back into doing what we've always done is so much harder, because it's almost like you're trying to start a car and it won't quite turn over to like get going the way that it used to. And unfortunately, I think we as therapists, especially, but as new parents, like you were saying before, that feels like failure. instead of like,
Mhm.
oh yeah, right, I'm going through this massive transition. Of course it's going to be harder. No, we're not like thinking that in the moment. We just think we're terrible or whatever, some bad thing.
Yeah, exactly. And I think sometimes even that blows my mind sometimes because I'm like, I repeat, I see a mom client and I'm like, you just went through a transition. It's like that light bulb goes off, like, oh, yes, yes, I did. Oh,
It's
you
a
don't
big
just pop
change.
the baby out and go back into it, right? So we forget. I truly felt like I forgot that and
Yeah.
didn't give myself the grace to really acknowledge the big transition that I am, going through. And knowing that, and as you were mentioning that, knowing that, especially I recently had my third earlier this year. And, even my husband still had to remind me of like, you're falling back into your default. Like, remember you just had a baby. And I'm like, oh, yeah, you're right. Like, it's
Yeah.
like, because you're just, and I think also that sleep deprivation like gets you because you just
Mhm.
forget. Like, it's like you
Totally.
forgetting what day it is. It's like you just
Uh-huh.
forget. You're like, oh, yeah. I know I gave birth, but it's like
Right.
you, like just
Mhm.
get caught up in it. And so, and that's part of the process, right? Like,
Mhm.
some days are easier than others, and it's just one moment at a time, one thing, and just giving yourself the grace to acknowledge that, like, you just went through this big transition, and it's like a roller coaster of things, and but that support can really make a difference, right? Whether it's my husband kind of snapping me out and reminding me like,
Mhm.
you just had a baby, or that friend that I made who she I was able to align with her, or the wonderful therapist that I had, shout
Mhm.
out to the therapist, really has helped me, as I reflect, right? My fourth birthday, my eldest is about to turn 4, and just reflecting on, my goodness, like I'm not able to physically hug myself in that first year, but I definitely feel like if she were to be looking at me right now, obviously, be saying like, I'm doing a good job. I really feel like I'm doing the best that I can.
That's
Takes a lot of work
beautiful.
though.
Yes, it does. Yes, it does. Yeah, so in your experience looking back on things now or even currently, in either the difficult experience with your first or either of the other two experiences with your other children, was there anything specifically culturally supportive in your processes or specifically culturally made things more difficult, that are at top of mind right now?
One of the things that so in Mexican culture, there's this idea of like taking 40 days of rest, 40 days of like resting your body, you're recovering and time to bond with the baby. And with my first, I took no such thing as no 40 days. Like, I felt like I needed to do it all. I would
Mhm, mhm,
not let myself rest. People brought food and I just wouldn't let myself rest. I have a memory of my best friend's mom, came over to help me with the baby because I had just been home. And there's this idea, right? So it's 40 days of rest. Someone stays with you, whether like they sleep over, but there's people around you to care for the baby or to
mhm.
clean the house and stuff like that. I was on my hands and knees cleaning my bathroom floorboards because I was like,
Oh,
it's dirty and she's going to notice.
oh,
Again, for Veronica at that time, because I'm
mhm,
like, it was my thinking. It's because I think also it takes a lot of energy for me to welcome help and to
mhm,
really accept it. And so with my second and even with my third, I still struggled with like accepting help, but I did take into the consideration of my 40 days of rest. And so what that looked like is there's this and the name is escaping me, but I know her name is Angelica, and I'm forgetting the name of her business, but it's here in LA. And she had like this postpartum support for moms. And it started because she was giving me massages, pregnancy massages. And because this is my second pregnancy, I'm like, I'm going to treat my body. The fact that it needs
good.
going through this transition, give it massages. And so she came for that first month and would cook meals for me. Oh my gosh,
Mm,
the best meals, hot food. So that's also part of the 40 days is the you are to only drink soups, like hot food, right, to close up your body, keep your what do you call this, stomach, waist wrapped tight, because your body is putting itself back together, right? Don't pick up anything heavy except the baby, sit down, a lot of resting. And so she came. That's what I gifted myself for my second pregnancy.
Oh, I love that.
She would massage my body. She would incorporate, because at that time I had a toddler and now a newborn. She would play with my daughter so that I could, and hold the newborn so that I could take a bath.
Nice.
I would sit in the bath by myself with a hot drink.
Right. Beautiful.
Give me my massage. And the thing is like my first, I thought like, I don't need that. That's not needed. But oh my gosh, did I need it? Oh, it made such a difference in my mood and how I felt supported. And so
cool.
That was a big shift that now as my friends start to have kids and stuff, like one, I either refer them to her service or, and who's the name of it, I just know her name is Angelica and I can't think of her name, but it made a difference. She was very accommodating and I needed that massage. I needed that touch. And so.
Yeah. Okay, listeners, we'll be sure to get that information for you. And I will leave it in the outro for this episode.
Yes. Because she's a lifesaver. And, so, because that's a big part of Mexican traditions, culture, is like to come around the mother to support her, at least in those first, few days. And first, yes. And even though it's something that it has taken me a lot of energy in accepting that from my own family. I think it's just part of it is in my family, I function as like, I know it all. Like I got this together, So, for anyone listening that's like, oh my gosh, you hired someone else to kind of help you. Like that was my way of, that's where I was at. Like I struggled with asking that of people. And so I needed, and with my third, I've had the baby during the pandemic. So I had to accept help from family and not had to, wanted to.
Yeah.
It just took energy. So I think that was a big cultural thing that I've gravitated towards and something that I extend as my way of helping with, other friends that are having kids or even just, clients of just, even if we're not of the same culture, but of like finding out what are cultural practices, what are pieces that help you during that time.
For sure. I mean, yeah, that sounds like massive support. And I mean, you clearly saw between 1 and 2 how much easier things were because of that support. I think a lot of people have that same kind of feeling that you had with your first, like, no, I can do it. And you just don't know what you don't know yet sometimes until you go through it and have the realizations that you had along the way. It's really hard. Because we're given these messages that we're in some ways supposed to be able to do it all and be martyrs and do everything for your child, and you don't really exist anymore. You're just there for them. And I mean, I think we're all, you and I both, and everyone else in this specialty are really trying to get rid of that messaging and let people know that it's okay to have help and to take time for yourself. And it doesn't mean you're a bad mom. But the messaging is so strong. Even sometimes when I put stuff on social media, I'll get pushback about taking breaks, or that moms shouldn't need to take breaks. And that's absolutely ridiculous. You know that now, and I know that now, but neither one of us knew it in our first postpartum.
Yeah.
Really tough to know. Well,
it is.
great.
And it's tough to sometimes accept also that we need to do that. And it's just part of the reason of why, and which is why I love how you show up on social media and, other things like that, because it's true. Like we got to get the message out there.
Yeah. You got to push past all of the other messaging and sometimes be as loud as possible. But, it's hard. These things are ingrained in us from early. Anyways, from our generations, hopefully these next generations of kids will grow up knowing that it's okay to take breaks if you need and ask for help and get help and all that.
Yes, that's the goal.
Right. Well, I thank you for sharing what helped you and specifically culturally, what is supportive. Your experience is so important. Like I said, when we started, for therapists to hear, but I think just for everybody to hear that it may seem that we all have it all together on the outside, but we're still human. And so, yeah, do you have anything for folks out there, anything to say to them about your experience or what you hope people know about this journey?
That no one has it figured out. No one knows what they're doing.
Right.
And that's okay. I think
Yeah.
that's the piece that makes it, I'm going to use the word fun because, and hard,
Yeah.
but
Yes. Yes.
I think that if there's no one right way, that means that we can create it in the way that works for us and what works for our family.
Woohoo. Yes.
I think
Yes.
sometimes, yeah, like we sometimes get so many messages of do this, do that, you should do this. And I very much, remind myself like there's nothing I can take in the messages, but I need to be the one to decide on if it's going to be how I want it to work for my family or for me, and that I have the best intentions of how I should, of how I want to show up as a mom. And so, yeah, just,
Yeah.
remembering as much as you can that that's kind of the fun. And when you're in the hard parts of it, like that is where your community is really important. And so whether that's that group text that gets you going or the social media, listening to this podcast, or taking that walk and being alone for a moment to gather your thoughts, praying, whatever it is, like, get that support and have fun with it. One step at a time.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Veronica, for coming on and sharing all of this with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for joining us in this conversation today. If you would like to get connected with Dr. EO, you can find her at drveronicalcsw.com or Instagram, Dr. Veronica EO. If this conversation has supported you or you know of somebody who could be supported by it, please do share, pass this along so we can make sure anyone who needs support can have it. Thank you so much for being with us. Until next time. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please share this podcast. Together we can support moms and families so that no one has to deal with this alone. Come connect with us at momandmind.com.